All right, I want to welcome everyone to the Kayak Fishing RAW podcast, sponsored by Costa Sunglasses, See What's Out There, and Railblazer, Hold Everything. Jim, it's good to see you, my friend.
Joe, it's good to be seen, although I wish I wasn't here right now.
Oh, I know.
Should be out fishing.
So just so you guys know, to fill you in on what's going on, we have Jim Sammons here. He came to Pompano Beach to film one of his shows for the Sailfish Smackdown, and... Jim, what did you do?
And
what did you do?
As per usual, when I come to Florida, I bring wind and rain and everything you don't want to have.
Do you have an Indian hex on you in South Florida?
I think I've got something going on. I don't know what it is. I mean, we've dealt with weather all over the place where we've gone.
Right.
But Florida in particular seems to hate me.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough.
Sideways rain.
To put it to people this way, in 6 years, something like that, not 76, 7 or 6 years, we haven't had to postpone an event.
And I can bring it. I can bring it.
Oh my God. So we postponed the Sailfish Smackdown to February 10th and 11th. We're going to have the kickoff party at Brews Room. And as you guys know, we're going to have a huge raffle to benefit the Broward's Children's Center. Unfortunately, Jim, you're not going to be able to make it to that date.
I don't think we're going to be able to make it back.
Okay, okay.
Well, you're probably happy about that.
No.
I'll bring a tornado.
Well, we did go fishing at Lake Ida yesterday.
Yeah, in the wind.
Right. So...
Well, you were the king. I mean, at least you got 2 fish.
Right. So we did a little fishing in Lake Ida for his show. We're trying to do some filler stuff, and I got a couple bass. But we did notice. I really think these cold fronts are starting to affect us here in South Florida. You know, we were seeing dead
peacocks,
peacock bass,
dead iguanas.
Yeah, Jim hooked into like a monster 40-pound dead iguana.
Yeah, lucky enough to. The biggest thing I hook is a dead iguana.
I think Will said it best. There was like these kids on the post, and he was like, "Shit's sleeping." So we. Yeah.
The coolest, you know, we were talking about it earlier today. Will and I and Brooks were saying the absolute coolest thing yesterday.
Right.
The golden retriever.
Yes. Do you want to talk about that, or you want me to talk about it?
Oh man, this was. I love goldens. I have a golden retriever.
Right.
And we just passed 2 really spunky, just wild, young golden
white
retrievers.
Yeah. And we're fishing. We got our lines out. We're doing like a fast drift. The wind's at our back.
Yeah. And then we come past, and there's this guy on the dock in a swing, and we look over, and there's his other, little bit older golden retriever. And I've never seen an animal so locked in on what it was like. He was on
looking at a turtle or something?
Well, I think he thinks he was looking at something alive, but I think in reality he was like staring at a leaf.
Yeah, this dog literally. So we're drifting, and the dog is like, his foot is slowly lifting, and he's just staring at like this black leaf or turtle, or I don't know what it was, but. This thing, we were making noises, we're talking, one of your guys dropped his phone, I mean, it's chaos, and this dog is just literally like staring.
Laser
locked,
focused
in.
And literally for like probably 5 minutes, as we drifted through that area, this dog did not move, never looked at us.
Never seen anything like that in my life.
I said it was so cool. I mean, I love Goldens, and the personalities, I've seen 3 different Goldens, each one of their personalities was so different.
Yeah.
But I've never seen that.
That was weird.
It's so locked in.
He didn't look at us for like 10 minutes.
No.
At all. Like we drifted, we were gone.
Oh, we were there looking around for Brooks's phone. Which is a whole nother story. Brooks had lost his phone.
Oh,
and that dog never looked at us.
Yeah, that was
so
weird.
I mean, I think what this kind of says is that, you know, we're here. We came here to do the Sailfish Smackdown.
Sure.
We came here to go fishing for big fish. We went out on a crappy, windy day.
Yeah.
And still had a great time and laughed and had some fun.
Yeah,
and that's what it's all about.
Right. I mean, fishing's fishing. You know, especially hanging out with you guys. I mean, it was a ball. I mean,
you make the best of it. Yeah. You know.
But yeah, I mean, with Jim, with you though, personally, like, I kind of want to know. We've had you on the podcast before.
Yep.
But we never really got into like you personally on like, how did you get started into all this? I mean, you are like one of the top guys in the industry.
Well, one of the old guys, that's for sure.
I'm getting old, man. Oh my God.
Well, you know what? It was just a passion that I had. you know, I started kayak fishing. My father-in-law introduced me to kayaking.
Right.
And
In California, right?
In San Diego, yeah.
Okay.
And I was already fishing off of surfboards.
Right.
I never had any money. I couldn't afford a boat, anything like that. So when he introduced me to kayaking, touring kayaks, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I started looking around. I found some of the very first sit-on-top kayaks, the old ocean kayak scuppers. And I just started doing it. And then I would find myself talking about kayak fishing almost more than I was fishing. I would get off the water, and it was so unusual then. I mean, you just didn't see kayak fishermen. So you would see me coming in, and I'd have a yellowtail or something like that.
What year is this around?
This would have been late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started my guide business in 1994.
Wow.
So, and that was the same thing. It's like I was talking to people about kayak fishing so much. Every time I'd get off the water, I'd then spend another hour talking to people.
Sure.
And so my buddy's like, dude, you love this so much, you should try to do something with it.
Now back then, was this like all word of mouth? Because I mean, with the internet and stuff like that, it was still.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it was word of mouth. It was still magazines that were still actually being read.
Yeah.
Newspapers. We had a great outdoor writer in San Diego named Ed Zaralski.
Okay.
And the very first year that Tiger Woods won the Masters.
Yeah, he's a Raider fan, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Just throwing that out there.
I do root for the Raiders every time they play the Chargers now.
Really?
Every time. Well,
You're pissed that they left.
The Chargers are dead to me.
Okay. So you were one of the fans that threw the jersey in the fire.
I got rid of every piece of Charger gear I had. I watched one NFL game this year.
Really?
It was, and I was hardcore football. I played football. I loved.
I
football.
saw your posts in the past. You were.
Yeah. So I watched one game.
Now is that because of the
just NFL, and it was just dead to me.
Yeah.
So I watched.
It was a tough year.
I watched the Charger Raider game, rooting for the Raiders, and I never thought.
Freaking.
And I thought never in my life would I ever root for the Raiders.
Wow.
And the freaking Raiders let me down.
We sucked this year, man. Oh my god! But Chucky's back.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm excited. We got off a little bit with football, but that's what we do on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, like I said. So anyway, it's just one of those things. I mean, I just had this passion for it.
Yeah.
Started.
Now, how fast was it building? Your business. I mean, you started with doing how many charters?
Yeah, well, I did it as a side business.
Okay.
I was a truck driver.
All right.
I worked for Pepsi-Cola for a long time, and so it was kind of a sideline. I worked 4 days and had 3 days off that I could guide.
Right.
And I basically, I've always, even back then, I've always stayed as busy as I wanted to be.
Okay.
And sometimes, because I've got a really bad back, sometimes that's working 7 days a week. Sometimes that's working 1 or 2 days a month. And now, thankfully, with the shows and, the interwebs, like I said, it's still the same. I can still work when I want to work.
But now it's a different world compared to what it was back then. I mean, when you started, it's got to be...
It's so different. Like I said, Ed Zaralski wrote a great article about me that year that Tiger Woods won. It was in the same weekend issue.
Okay.
Full-page article about my business. And I spent the next week on the phone nonstop, just answering calls. And that really kind of built things up. And then I hurt my back badly at Pepsi, and I couldn't go back to the job. And so I started, once I had my back surgery and got all sorted away, I just started guiding more full-time. And then I met Ken Whiting at a trade show. Ken Whiting is from Heliconia Press, my producer of the show, and I proposed an idea of a TV show to him.
Very cool.
And he goes, I know nothing about TV.
Really?
Oh, no, he'd never done TV.
Oh, so I'm picturing like a producer, like he's ready to...
No, Ken is a former world champion whitewater kayaker who became well known for making instructional videos and books.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I just pitched this idea of what I want. He goes, well, I know nothing about TV. How about we do a DVD? And so my idea was kind of along the lines of a Warren Miller film. If you know, Warren Miller made these ski films that were just awesome. They were cool people, great music, cool locations. Rest in peace, Warren Miller. He just passed away. a couple days ago, or yesterday maybe. But that was my thought, was a show like that. And it was going to be called Kayak Fishing the World.
Right.
And now I got to admit.
Now, what did he say though?
I pitched this idea to anybody I ever met who had any kind of production kind of deal going on. I'm like, I just kept throwing it out there. Eventually it might stick. And most of the time it didn't. And so after I proposed this idea to Ken, about 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from him and he goes, Jim, we're going to do this. Can you be in Florida? Florida, our very first shoot was in Florida. Can you be in Florida in May? And I'm like, yeah.
So wait, he's saying right away, he just said, I need you to drop what you're doing.
Yep.
Come to Florida. We're going to start our first episode.
Yep. Well, we're going to make a DVD.
Okay.
And what we made.
What year was this around?
Will, what year was this? I don't remember.
Will, where are we at?
11 years ago? 11
or 12 years ago. Because we're shooting right now. We're going to begin shooting for our 10th year on the air.
Wow.
And we started shooting 2 years before that for the DVDs. So we did Game On, Kayak Fishing, Game On. And that was our first DVD. And we made 4 of those. But right when we started shooting Game On 2, the network, the World Fishing Network, was really just getting going and they needed content.
Yeah.
And they asked us to turn our DVDs into a TV show. So as we were shooting the second DVD, we kind of had to change our mindset onto how we were shooting. It was no longer just we had to be a little more commercial, if you will.
Yeah. Now, at the time, Will was with you, right?
Will and I, my partner in crime over here, old married couple, or we certainly sound like it a lot of time. Will and I have been shooting together since day one.
Okay.
So I've never had another videographer. So it's been
That's
a great,
cool.
It's been a great relationship. We fight like an old married couple sometimes, but we also know how each other works.
Right. Joe, help me! Help me!
He's sleeping. Well, I was laughing about that like all last night. I couldn't even go to bed.
I need somebody to rescue me. I've been kidnapped.
That was great. What were we talking about?
Yeah. So anyway, it's just we have a relationship where we bicker and fight, but we know
sounds like me and Doug.
We know how we work,
right.
and we get the job done. And I guess the beauty of it is that we're shooting for our 10th year on the air.
Yeah.
So somebody must be watching. Somebody must like it.
Of course, man.
We must be doing something right. We always have fun.
Yeah.
And that's always the key. Whether we're having to deal with stuff like, the weather we've had here every single time I come to Florida.
Damn, Jim.
And but we always make the best of it. And I think that comes across in the show, or at least I hope it does.
As someone that's watched the show, I would say my favorite part of the show is how real you guys are. Because, you can come across some shows and you'll watch it and it's reality TV, but it's fake.
Right.
With you guys, it's real. Maybe it's because I know you guys. I don't know how that works, but when I watch you guys, it's believable. It's real. It's what you guys really do.
Well, and what and
that's important.
We've had a policy since day one.
Yeah.
We don't fake it.
Yeah.
If the fishing's good,
and I can vouch for that.
If the fishing's good, we're showing us catching fish.
Right.
If the fishing's bad, we will say
it sucks.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I have never, and I'm proud to say, I've never taken a hand off in this show. And we've had plenty of people want me to.
It's good to know. I'm sure people wonder.
I'd never have somebody hand me a rod or another fish. And I've had guides on the trip get very frustrated and angry, but then after the fact say, you know what, Jim?
Get angry?
Oh, well, because you're trying to show them too, and then so they don't want to have a show where nothing happened,
right?
And so if they've got a line in on the guide boat, and I won't paddle over and take it, they get a little perturbed.
Irritated.
But then after the fact, more often than not, they're like, you know what, Jim? It pissed me off at the time. I really respect that.
Yeah,
because we all know, people in this business know that a lot of shows aren't like that.
Of course.
There's a lot of faking going on.
Of course.
And we've just never, ever allowed it.
Yeah.
And because we want it to be real.
Yeah.
It's fishing. We all have bad trips.
Exactly.
We all have bad weather.
And that's the thing. I feel like people sometimes forget that, you know, they always want all this stuff to be perfect, even with the tournaments, you know, but people forget it's fishing. Like, you're gonna have those days. You're gonna have days where it's too windy. You're gonna have days where the fishing sucks. You're gonna have days where it's slow. It's just the way it is. I mean,
right.
You know what I mean? It's you can't expect every single time to be the greatest ever, because then it actually wouldn't be fun anymore.
Right. There would be no challenge. You wouldn't.
Right.
And like I said, I mean, you have the tournament aspect. We
Sure.
were talking about that on the water, because I used to be a tournament director. I
Yeah.
put on a tournament in California, and it's a thankless job sometimes. It's like,
very
you know,
difficult. Yeah.
And you do it because you love it.
Exactly.
You love it because you love the community and you want to do stuff. And when you get some negativity comes back at you, people don't understand that, you know, you've put your heart and soul into this,
Right.
and it can be a little frustrating when
Yes.
people come at you.
Yeah,
You know, it's like, you know, I did my best.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling you on the water, you know, Jim and I were talking about tournaments and, you know, what it takes to run them and what goes into them and all the work. And, you know, I've had death threats. I've had people call my wife terrible names. So.
And for the record, guys, you know, that maybe on the West Coast that don't know this, these guys put on the absolutely best tournament series there is.
Thanks,
These things are done like a professional. I mean, a lot of our tournaments on the West Coast, the kayak fishing tournaments anyway, are very low key and, you know, almost a money between friends sometimes. And these guys put on it's an event.
Yes.
It is an event. I mean, you go there, they get the stage set up. They got the champagne going. I mean, these are class events. And the reason that these, I mean, I'm not a tournament guy. I've always said this. But your tournaments have always appealed to me because, A, they're offshore, which you just don't see many. Our tournament was always offshore.
Yeah.
But you don't see a lot of offshore tournaments. They're big game stuff.
Location's key.
And it's just it's super cool. Very well. I've been watching from the periphery for a long time. And then we had the opportunity to come to the battle in the Bahamas, and we saw how that was.
Yeah.
And the sailfish one, obviously, being a lover of catching billfish off the kayak,
Right.
that tournament, I had to come for that.
Yes.
And curse it.
Oh, Jim. But yeah, that was going to be my question is, you know, what makes our tournaments appealing for you guys? Because I think it's awesome that you guys come here and, you know, we want to show, you know, people in California and the world, you know, what we are and what we do here on the East Coast. And, you know, I modeled, for people that don't know, these tournaments after the big boat tournaments that I used to fish in New Jersey growing up, and even some of the big tournaments here in South Florida. Everyone wants to feel just wanted, and you want to get amped up, and we have that shotgun start in the morning, and, you know, we got music playing and everyone's getting amped, and then we do the shoot off. And let me tell you, I mean, even if you don't catch a fish, it's exciting. And that's what we wanted to bring to kayak fishing, was that excitement, that pro feeling of just, you know, even if you see the winners, you see the $5,000-$10,000 checks, the beautiful girls, the champagne showers. I mean, that was the goal that we had. And to have you guys come and to 2 tournaments now, you know, it's exciting.
No, like I said, I mean,
I appreciate it.
They are run like no other tournament I've ever seen kayak fishing wise, and that's what appealed to me. Like I said, every of those aspects that I described. And so, you know, like I said, it's a shame we weren't able to actually see it this time.
Yeah.
Thankfully, people that watch the show, Joe is going to get us some footage when the tournament actually does happen. So we'll
get you some cool stuff.
Yeah, so that'll be included in the show, even if we didn't actually get to be a part of it.
Right.
But I mean, billfish off the kayak. I mean,
there's nothing better.
Yeah. No. They're apex.
The funny part is when we did the very first tournament, that tournament actually put Extreme on the map, because that very first sailfish tournament, it was funny. We barely had any locals, which is the crazy part, because they all thought it couldn't be done. You can't have a billfish kayak tournament. No one's going to get any billfish. And we ended up getting guys from Oklahoma that flew here for the tournament, or I think they drove. But they ended up winning the event. And when those guys from a landlocked state won a sailfish tournament in South Florida, it changed everything for our business. It was unbelievable. So now it proved that it can be done, that multiple sailfish can be caught. And our winner last year won with 4 sailfish catch and release.
That's absolutely amazing.
So I mean, it's
well, I mean, you said that it can't be done. Back in the day, when I caught my first billfish off the kayak, you know, this was just crazy. It was 1998. I caught my first marlin, striped marlin off the kayak in San Diego. And people are like, didn't believe me.
Yeah.
Well, you can't troll fast enough for a marlin. I'm like,
Oh, they don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trolling a feather. I go, a live bait looks natural, you know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, we're trolling live mackerel out there, but people who are doubters and, you know, so we just go out and do it again.
And that's the thing. I feel like in the beginning, you know, when I started, obviously it was way later than you. It was the mid 2000s. But when I started, the pictures were everything. And I was obsessed with getting the best pictures possible to promote something that was just an idea at the time.
Right.
And, you know, I was on a roll catching all these wahoo. A lot of people know me, you know, as the wahoo guy or the big mahi-mahis that I call in the past. And, you know, a lot of it was luck, but a lot of it was dialing in, the, you know, the right moons, the currents, outgoing tide, full moon, 5 days after, you know, all that stuff played in. But when we started consistently getting these wahoo, 60 pounds, 50 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever, that's when it was getting to a point where people were like, Joe, when are you going to put on a tournament? You know,
right.
It's time. And that's kind of how it grew, but it was from the pictures.
Yeah, we have yellowtail, we have white sea bass. We don't get those kind of fish in San Diego unless we have an El Nino where we occasionally get the yellowfin, bluefin. I mean, that is an El Nino year when I caught my marlin, wahoo, that sort of thing. So to have a fishery where you can get onto those pelagic species
a mile out,
paddling from the beach.
Right.
I mean, very jealous of that.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, because there's not many places you can do that. I can do that down in Mexico.
Right.
You can do it, you know, farther south. Of course, they can do it in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But there's not many places in mainland USA where you have an opportunity to paddle out to that kind of fish, and that's why I wanted to come here.
Yeah, I mean, here's the beauty of Pompano Beach in South Florida. We have two major runs. Actually, I would say three major fish runs that I think is kind of the staple of South Florida. Is, you know, number one, in the wintertime, obviously you got the sailfish run, and you got all those sailfish just coming right through, thousands of them. And then if you get dialed in and you find that right depth, I mean, you can pick off 10 to 20 of them on a good day. But then we have, you know, the tuna run in the summertime. In the beginning of the summer, you got all those big, you know, fat, juicy blackfin tuna. And that's our SummerSlam Part 1 event in early June. And then the best part of South Florida is in August, the wahoo run. And those wahoo, I don't know where they come from. I'm guessing the Bahamas, but these big breeders come through. And these things are 70 pounds, 60 pounds. Some kid got a 90-something pounder.
Wow.
There's 100-pounders caught. It's unbelievable. And if you cut them open, you see the marrow come out. So they're coming through and they're breeding. But we have that moon dialed in for the final event of the year. And last year, a 71-pound wahoo. I'm not lying. You can go to the website and see the pictures.
That's an amazing fish.
Amazing fish. 71-pound wahoo won the tournament.
There is no better eating fish.
Exactly. No. I mean, I got the tattoo on my arm. I mean, I am obsessed with wahoo. It is the goldfish. They're just amazing. And, you know, I mean, I tell people, if you come here, you better have well over 300 yards of line in SummerSlam too, because those things will take off.
And again, I think here and Hawaii are really the two places where people have a legitimate shot at wahoo.
Definitely.
We had a guy get a 72-pounder off his kayak in San Diego.
Awesome.
But again, El Nino year.
Yeah, it was
rare.
rare.
I mean, it never happened before.
Right.
So it's an amazing fishery you have here.
Now, have you got wahoo in California?
Well, I said
yourself?
No,
okay.
no.
But you got striped marlin.
I got the striped marlin.
That's amazing.
Yellowfin and bluefin tuna, Dorado.
You got bluefin, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah, not big, 42 pounds.
Okay.
But the fact that the funny thing was, this was an El Nino year. I had never caught a yellowfin or a bluefin off of my kayak locally, and I caught them both the same year. Again, El Nino. Love El Nino. Warm water.
So the bluefin tuna, I got to ask you, number one, what was your gear? Because I'm sure people are going to ask. What were you using? And has there been people that have been in schools of these things where you got like 3 people doubled over and maybe someone get a 60-pounder?
Well, I don't know of any that were any really big ones.
Okay.
50-pounders. The ones we were catching are a little bit more close to shore, the small schoolies.
Okay.
We certainly have had some big bluefin. But
they're there, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's been some big ones offshore. The gear, you know, I'm I'm a proponent of small gear.
Yeah,
I
am too.
I don't.
Stealthy.
I think so many guys use such big reels that you don't need. And I actually did a video about this recently, and it was talking about the size gear that you need because when you're in a kayak, and people just sometimes don't realize the kayak is drag.
Exactly.
I mean, I've landed and had on quite a few Marlin on my kayak. I've never. I mean, fishing reels that are, this big.
Right.
The Siegler large game or large game narrow, or for people who don't know, just say a Penn 500, because everybody knows a Penn 500 size. I've never had a billfish get more than a third of the way into my spool.
That's interesting.
I fish a really tight drag.
Okay. I've had sailfish go on a major run, but they come in quick.
Yeah.
So they get tired real fast. Whereas wahoo are more like 2 runs, and then they're totally done. They'll come up almost dead. But that's interesting.
I fish a really tight drag, and because I've always said, why give them line?
No, I agree.
I'm already giving them my kayak.
Yeah, and let's not play around.
Yeah,
let's just get them up.
They're taking my kayak wherever they want. So the kayak is drag.
Yeah.
So why give them line too?
Yeah. Use your kayak as a tool.
Yeah, that you're never pulling as hard on a fish as you think you are.
Right.
Because the kayak is moving. And I'll always say this, if you want to find out how hard you can pull, snag 20-pound mono on the bottom and try to break it in a kayak.
I like that.
Because it stretches.
Right.
The swell's going up and down. I mean, I've landed pretty big yellowtail and white sea bass, and I got a 67-pound thresher shark on 6-pound test.
What?
I said you're just never pulling that hard as long as you got the right leader.
Damn, man.
You
that's epic.
Yeah, and I landed that thresher, the 67-pound thresher. I landed it in about 25 minutes.
Wow.
And they're a strong jumping fish.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, listen. My slogan was always less is more when you're fishing offshore, because I'll see these guys lined up on the beach and they'll have 6 or 7 rods with them on their kayak, and they're just full to the max of just everything you can think of. And when I used to go out and catch 60-pound plus wahoo all the time with my good friend Doug, we would go out and we'd have a bubbler and a bucket, and I'd have 2 rods, one on the bottom, one with an egg weight, and I'd go stealthy with 40-pound leader, and then a little bit of wire with a treble. And that was it. And our hooks were small. They were 3/0 hooks. I mean, I was catching consistent wahoo, billfish, blackfin tuna on 3/0 hooks. I mean,
well, for instance,
I love little hooks as long as they're strong.
That first Marlin, I was fishing for yellowtail, and this was before.
Really?
This was before. Well, we don't have Marlin. This was just a random catch.
Did you fish for the yellowtail on the bottom though?
No. Our yellowtail are the like an amberjack.
Okay, so you're kind of slow trolling.
This is slow trolling a live mackerel.
All right, I got you.
Okay, so this is before the days of braid.
Right.
I was fishing 20-pound mono straight tide to a 2/0 hook.
Really?
And that fish dragged me 8 miles for 2.5 hours.
Jesus.
And
let me ask you this real quick. Now, I'm a big lover of I don't like braid. Now, that's just me personally.
I love braid.
I like the old school, line and Tamano and just.
Right.
I mean, I just feel like it's just better. I don't know.
I love braid.
You're a big braid guy.
I love braid. And maybe it's because I'm cheap. Mono, you're constantly having to change your line.
Very true.
And braid, I don't. So I use Seaguar line. I use their Threadlock hollow core braid.
Okay.
And so I love the hollow core loop-to-loop connections, knotless connections.
Right.
So I make my own wind-on leaders. So I'll make like a 20-foot fluorocarbon leader. So I've got very little stretch in my whole setup. So then I'll have a rod that's maybe got a little bit of softer tip for that shock absorption.
Sure.
But yeah, I love braid. And we have, in San Diego, we have a lot of kelp. So a yellowtail loves to run in kelp. So
you look for the kelp and you're fishing around that.
No, we're talking growing kelp.
Yeah. It's like a big
kelp,
plant, right?
Yeah.
That goes upward.
Yeah. So you have the kelp beds that run all along the coast, and these fish will swim right along the edges of it. And then when you hook up, they love to run into the kelp.
Interesting.
And they will break you off. So with the braid, it'll cut through the kelp. So we call it a kelp cutter rig.
Okay.
So you need that abrasion resistance that you don't get from mono.
Right.
If a yellowtail wraps in kelp with mono and you're trying to get that out and that mono's just stretching,
Yeah.
It's brutal. You want them to be able to cut through it.
And those sea bass get gigantic,
Sea
right?
bass get really big. My biggest sea bass a couple years ago was 62 pounds.
Okay.
I think the world record's close to 100 pounds.
Jesus.
But they don't fight.
They're just a lump.
Comparatively speaking, they make one really good first run,
Right.
and then they're done. My biggest at 62 pounders,
Yeah.
I had on my kayak in less than 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they just come up kind of like a grouper where they're kind of bubbling and they just kind of lay
They
sideways?
fight and then go whoop, they just roll over.
Yep,
And so this actually the funny story on that 62 pounder, it was a squid bite. We had a squid float.
Yeah.
So out there, and all of a sudden my line just takes off. I just grab it, and I'm a big fan of lever drag reels. So I just throw it into gear, and like I said, I fish a really tight drag. So I just put my head down. I was like, just grinding.
How'd that go?
And I literally had the fish up much faster than I realized.
Yeah.
And I slammed it into the bottom of my kayak. So it was like, woo, 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 boom.
Damn.
And then he just rolled
Knocked him out?
Yeah, I did, literally. And I mean, it was, to say it was probably closer to 2 minutes than 5 would not be an exaggeration on how fast I landed that fish.
Right.
So, like I said, the white sea bass are delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very good eating.
Sure, you get a lot of meat from it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And they're impressive because they're a very long fish.
Yeah.
But fighting-wise, I'd much rather catch a yellowtail.
Okay.
Yellowtail will hurt you.
Yeah. So they're just like an amberjack.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. They make your arms ache.
Right. My first amberjack here in South Florida kicked the shit out of me.
Right.
I mean, first of all, I hooked into it. It was my first amberjack ever. And, you hear stories about these fish, but then when you actually fight it, I mean, this thing kicked my butt. I'm sitting there, and listen, I'm not a little guy, and this thing is doubled over, like, in the water. I mean, my kayak is tilted all the way to the side. The thing was like a 60-plus pounder. I mean, that's a beast.
That's a
beast. But yeah, I mean, I got him on a jig, so I'm like reeling up the jig fast, and then it just stopped. And then, like, it's almost like, I don't know if...
There's not much better.
Oh, yeah, it just stops, and it's like the fish knows and you know at the same time, and then you go opposite ways instantly. And then it starts screaming, and, when I brought this thing up, I almost fell out of the kayak, and I think one of them threw Freddie out of the kayak a while back when I was fishing with him, but, I mean, these fish are monsters.
Yeah,
so
they're so strong, and like you said, if you're getting them on the jig, and like, we get big yellowtail in New Zealand, and that same thing, we're doing the mechanical jigging or vertical jigging, and man, when that jig just stops,
yeah,
I mean, nothing is like that, because it literally is like, ugh,
exactly,
it just bends you over. Particularly, again, you fish that really tight drag because you got to keep them out of the structure.
Right.
It's like, just hang on, and that's what I learned. I actually learned how hard I could pull on a fish was in New Zealand.
Yeah,
because we were fishing 80-pound line, 80-pound braid, 80-pound Seaguar fluoro, and getting smoked. And so we just like tighten the drag, and then another fish, you get smoked, and you just tighten the drag, and then you got to the point of just like, okay, I can pull a lot harder. I can fish a much tighter drag than I ever realized.
Yeah.
We were fishing with our buddy Jay. I mean, we can tell fishing stories all day. But
I know. I love it.
We're fishing with our buddy Jay. Got arms almost as big as yours.
Yeah.
And he is... We're up against this island, right?
Right.
And it just drops straight down. And he gets on a big yellowtail. And he's got one foot pushing against the island. And the other, his rod is bent in half.
That's awesome.
And he lands the fish, but it's all because he's just fishing lockdown drag. You cannot give them any line or they're gonna rock you.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's where I learned about how hard I could pull and how tight of a drag I could put on that reel.
Now, are you gonna do an Alaskan Are you gonna do an Alaskan trip anytime soon? Have you done one before?
I've done Alaska.
I haven't seen any of those episodes.
Yeah, we've done Alaska a few times.
What can you tell me about that?
We've had some weather issues there as well, but of course that's Alaska, and you're dealing with it. Never snow, rain, wind, but we've got some really good fish, some big halibut,
Yeah.
big lane cod.
That's my dream, man.
Well,
I
our
want
buddy-
a monster halibut.
Well, our buddy Howard, I think, still holds the record for the largest halibut, which was 183.
Jesus, man.
And that was 100% solo on his kayak. Or I shouldn't even say on his kayak, but he was solo. He got it on the kayak. And then, because he knew he couldn't physically land it on the kayak,
Right.
he paddled it underneath, while kind of with the rod out, paddled it to an island, got off the kayak, pulled it up onto shore, and then was able to actually land it, strapped it down on the kayak, and then paddled it home.
We had a guest, Joel Ambers.
Oh yeah, Joel.
Yeah, and he was talking about his fish, and we saw his pictures. Man, I mean, just to see those halibut that he catches, and he was talking about, bringing his kayak in like a river, like a saltwater river, and like he would spot cast for him, and these things were just gigantic. I mean, it's unbelievable. I believe he got like the biggest shark or something.
Yeah, well, he's got that big. What kind of shark?
What are they,
is
like
that?
Norwegian sharks or something like that?
Yeah.
What is
What's that?
it?
Is it a whale shark?
No.
Green,
Greenland.
Greenland shark.
Yeah, like a Greenland
Yeah,
shark or
Greenland
something
shark.
like that. But I mean, epic.
But the 1,200-pound fish, I think they were estimating. But the reality,
Yeah.
I mean, he landed it in an hour.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, so I think he was more just a winch. I don't think those things pull at all.
Yeah.
Impressive as hell, just being able to wind the thing
He's
up.
a riot. Have you talked? I mean,
and yeah, we met him. We fished with him.
you
in
met him.
Sweden.
That's. I mean, he was talking about how he hooked himself in his taint on the podcast. He's like, I hooked my taint, and we're just. I mean, that guy is a riot. I mean, I think that was
super
episode 3 or 4 we had him on. So it was really cool to talk to.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you know what? We've been to Sweden. I've been twice. We shot the show there once. We're probably going back this year.
Right.
Wonderful people, and what a great kayak fishing community over there too.
Cool.
The whole European team is a riot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, great people. So like I said, we're probably going back this year.
That actually brings me to my next question is, where do you see like the future of kayak fishing? And then maybe where do you see the future of the offshore part of it? Because it seems like that's kind of the newer segment that's kind of starting to build steam.
Well, it's funny because the offshore has always been around where we are.
Right.
And it's where the primary growth in kayak fishing has been bass fishing. Because it's getting that every guy out. Not everybody wants to go offshore.
Correct.
So the growth has really been in the bass fishing aspect. But I think, just as it keeps going, people are going to see what one guy does and they're going to try and one-up it.
Sure.
Some of it is fantastic. Some of it is just they're doing it for attention, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Some just ridiculous stuff.
Right.
I mean, I could name some people, but I won't. That just make us all look like idiots.
Mm-hmm.
But the sport overall, I mean, it's going to keep growing because, I mean, it's still the most affordable way for guys to get out there.
Right.
And although, like I said, I'm not a tournament guy, tournaments like yours that are run the way they are just so cool. And the tournaments in the bass segment are really helping grow that sport.
Sure.
They're getting a lot more notoriety. Chad's doing his tournament. And how much is that prize for Chad's tournament?
$100,000.
$100,000 payout for kayak fishing. That's crazy. I mean,
with his tournament though, doesn't he have like boat divisions and stuff like that?
Nope.
No,
it's all strictly kayak.
It's
Okay.
kayaks. I mean, he does allow electric motors on the kayaks. I think that's a sponsorship thing. But and I don't have a problem with people putting. I don't agree with motors on kayaks in tournaments personally.
Yeah,
I don't believe in the sales on kayaks in tournaments.
Yeah.
I
will say though, you want to hear a crazy stat? So we get, I would say, per tournament, 5 to 6 guys that have the sail, right? And they have never weighed in a fish.
That's amazing. So you
Is
have
that
guys
crazy?
So they're sailors, not fishermen.
I mean, yeah. I mean, these guys go out and they've never won one, and
right.
I think they have an advantage. But in reality,
I think they do have an advantage to it personally. But like I said, everybody's going to have their own rules that fit what they're doing, and I can respect that as long as the rules are written down and everybody knows them.
You ran tournaments for how many years?
We did ours for 11 years.
Okay.
And I mean, like I said, you have your rules, and as long as everybody knows them, that's what it is. So stick with them.
I always tell people it's like the NFL. Every year the NFL's got an added rule, change a rule, something to a rule. For our tournament anyway, it's just like that, because you're always going to have a guy push the limit to where you got to add something.
Right.
Or you got to, maybe not change it, but tweak it word-wise because someone's going to read it a certain way. And, and when people ask me, I'm like, listen, look at the NFL. Look at what happens every year. They're adding like 20 to 30 rules every year.
Right.
They're taking away 20 to 30 rules every year. So it's in any sport, stuff like that's going to happen.
Well, it's got to grow, it's got to change and adapt to what's going on there. But like I said, I'll get people because I've got a torpedo motor that I use once in a while on my kayak, and if anybody gives you a hard time, it's like, don't tell me how to have fun.
Right.
And I'm not going to give anybody a hard time for having pedals on their kayak,
right,
or for having a motor or a sail. It's like, you know what? That guy's got a smile on his face. He's having a good time. Why do we have to become so judgmental about stuff like that?
Exactly.
We're all out there just to have fun.
Yeah.
If it's in a tournament, that's a different story.
Yeah.
You just want people on the same playing field and following the right rules. But on your day-to-day stuff, just like mothershipping. Oh my gosh. I mean, the abuse that I've taken about mothershipping.
Really?
Yeah, because we're shooting a TV show. We've always got a camera boat with us.
See, I want to talk about the drama. Let's talk about the drama.
Just to give you a hard time,
right?
Because you're using a boat. Now, for instance, I used to do guided trips down into southern Baja.
Okay.
And we would always have a support boat. It's a safety boat. I got clients out there catching marlin and everything else and getting dragged for miles. I got a safety boat.
Hey, we got like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, and so to start our day, say if we were from the hotel and we're going to go to this place where we catch roosters,
right?
We'll drag the kayaks down there because it's 5 miles. Because I want my clients to have more time fishing and less time paddling. But then from that 5 mile, once they get to that spot, they are paddling all day long.
Yeah.
And then people say, "Oh, well, they mothershipped there." It's like, well, didn't you drive to the beach?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to walk with my kayak over my head for it to actually count?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why are you judging on how you're doing it? As long as, we're straight up honest. We're not saying, we're paddling 30 miles offshore and then, and then hooking a fish. We're saying exactly what we're doing.
The way I look at it, Jim, is there's always going to be that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. they want to judge you. Yeah. And it's like I said, don't tell me how to have fun.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you how to have fun.
Yeah. Listen, I think for me, now going into my 7th year running these events, I will say for the better that I've seen, at least with my tournament series, is when I first started, these guys were really cutthroat. And some of the guys were taking some of the fun out of the sport. And we were swift in our actions. And since then, I think the tournaments have been a blast. So it's I think the camaraderie, or I can't say that word, but it's really been 10 times better. I think sometimes you just got to make a stand and stick by it.
Yeah, that's what I love about the tournaments, and that's what I like with the old boondoggles these guys did. Those were great.
What were those like?
Well, I only ever went to one, but it was just a great gathering of like-minded people. There was no competition.
Okay.
Other than personal competition, as we always do,
right.
Out fishing your buddy. But it was just a great hangout.
Yeah.
A lot of eating, a lot of drinking, a little bit of fishing. Brooksy over there knows a lot more about them because he went to a bunch of them. But,
now, do those still go on?
Brooks, do they still do them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I know the guys who initially were doing them sold their company.
Oh, okay.
So it's been taken over by somebody else. I haven't heard as much about them since then.
Okay.
But it's still, like I said, it's just when you have like-minded people just hanging out and talking about the sport we love, that's when it's cool.
Right.
It's when it gets that cutthroat, people pushing the rules or going over the line on the rules.
Yeah.
You read about that with some of these bass tournaments for sure.
Yeah.
Where guys were changing their measuring board.
Yeah.
Like I said, in some respects, I've always felt tournaments can bring out the worst in people.
I agree. Yeah.
And as long as you, like you said, you put your foot down immediately.
Yeah.
With that, and we had to do that with ours.
Because
it lets everybody know where you stand, and that it is just about out here. We are
right,
out.
We're fishing.
It's a competition, but we're out here having
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Right. Like me and you, for instance. The tournament got winded out. Okay, is what it is. We still went out there, caught some bass, caught some dead iguana.
He's sleeping.
But I mean, it was awesome. You know, I mean, we still had a good time. You know, we're hanging out, we're taking some shots, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't love the sport, right?
Exactly, and that's what it's all about. It's just love the sport, kayak fishing. I mean, as a whole, that's why we do it.
I mean, just doing this, I love doing this. I love sharing the passion of the sport.
Yeah,
I love talking about it.
Yeah,
and sometimes I spend a lot more time doing that than I do the actual fishing part.
Yeah, that's all I do now. I'm semi-retired.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's harder to get on the water, but I never turn down a phone call from somebody who won't just ask questions.
Yeah,
because I just love sharing the information about it.
What's the last question here? But what's the biggest advice you would give to someone that is just starting in the sport and looks up to your show and just wants some information? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I would say, if you have a kayak fishing guide in your area, hire them. Hire them for a day.
Right.
Because they're going to cut your learning curve. They're going to keep you, and I'm not going to say all of them because there's good guides and bad guides, but they're going to keep you from making the little mistakes that I made. Because there was nobody to teach me how to kayak fish.
Sure.
It's 25 plus years of knowledge.
Yeah.
That and it's little things.
Sure.
It's
always a little.
It's little things, just like not winding in too close. Always give yourself a rod's length of line, so you're not fighting the rod, fighting the equipment.
Yeah.
Just little things, but you take people out there and you don't tell them that. And you watch, and they're winding fish up to the tip of their rod, and then they're dunking the reels in the water.
Yeah.
So it's just by hiring a guide.
I think I did that yesterday.
But by hiring a guide, getting some good instruction. If you're going to be a paddler, learn some good paddling technique. Get some instruction on that.
Right.
It's invaluable. I mean, it's going to take you a long way. It's going to shorten that learning curve, make you a more successful kayak angler and a much safer kayak angler. And always wear your PFD.
You're right there, Jim. I think Jim gets mad at me sometimes from a long time ago.
Yeah,
I was a bad boy back then.
Yeah, the PFD thing is.
It's important. I mean, listen, kids look up to what someone like you does, and they're gonna watch you on TV, and just like anyone else. I mean, kids look up to maybe Freddie. I mean, I don't know. and if he's not wearing
Freddie?
his PFD, yeah, who?
Freddie.
And but it's like it is important and.
My thing has always been, if you're going to put yourself in a position where people are kind of looking up to you,
right? Just
set a good example, because the reality is, and I hate to ever bring this stuff up, but I do bring it up, is people die doing this sport.
Sure.
And it's usually most of the people who die are not wearing a PFD.
Yeah.
And watch some of the videos that are out there. I mean, there's a guy in a canal. I saw a video got posted where a boat comes around a corner and just damn near sideswiped, and there's another guy in one that gets hit by the boat, and luckily nobody got hurt in these instances,
right?
But they certainly could have gone. I mean, well, what's that one with that boat? It was all over the internet recently. These guys are fishing out of a boat, and another boat comes, and they all have to jump off their boat because this big boat runs them over.
I saw that. That was unbelievable.
In cold water, it's just like stuff has. The thing is that things can go wrong so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, the PFD isn't for that time, I'm going to jump off my kayak and go for a swim.
Right.
Things can happen, and the PFD can save your life. So
yeah,
I agree. I'm adamant about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you should be. And, we make sure our anglers have them in our tournament series and also have a radio. So I mean, for us, that's really important too. But hey, man, listen, I really appreciate you coming down, especially doing the podcast, and sorry I got winded out. I mean, maybe that's your fault. I don't know.
I brought it. I carry a wind machine with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, but hopefully, you come to maybe one of the Summer Slam series. Usually in the summertime, the weather here is way better. But for those people that are still interested in the Sailfish Smackdown, it's February 10th and 11th. The kickoff party is February 9th at Brews Room in Pompano Beach. We're going to have a huge raffle that benefits the Broward's Children's Center. And Jim, you're the man, dude.
Thanks, man. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man.